Personally, I have all those in my family, whether it's prostate, heart disease, diabetes. Genetically, I hate to even think some of the things. But at the same time, does this technology, to a certain extent, with engagement, allow some of these underserved communities to sort of reach out now to get better care? Because that's a concern. Technically, with Susanna's reports, with the increase with cell phones and wireless, the access to broadband, you have an opportunity to really reach out to groups of people that never got the type of health care that traditionally never, been available to them. So, do you see that as a, sort of a game changer? Because a lot of times with the folks at Health 2.0, one of the things I mentioned, I said, it's great stuff, but does it work for people? And do people really have the opportunity to make it work? So, I see Suzanne's with the chronic illness. A lot of it I can see. My mother was diagnosed with sarcoidosis in 1976. She died in 1996. And I know she would have been with all this technology on top of it, but at the same time, a lot of people just don't have the energy or the access. So what do you think about all that?
So I think you're exactly right that a lot of this stuff, when you're talking about health disparities, I mean, this is where I can throw my Berkeley hat. When you talk about these health disparities, you're often talking about people who are working two jobs, who don't have as much time to devote to their health, who don't have access to information sources, who don't have access to if they want to decide to eat better, say they don't have access to good food.
Right.
And then when you get in terms of disease screening and things like that, it becomes very complicated.
Right.
So in fact, I just personally, my sister is a surgeon at Kaiser in Oakland, and she's colon cancer is for instance much higher rates of colon cancer among African American population. So she's actually going out and working with nurses just to distribute brochures.
Wow.
So it's very much analog.
Yeah.
That said, I think what is important about these kind of trajectories that I've been talking about is that these things are getting simpler. They're becoming much more integrated into our cell phones and into our into basically the fabric of our lives.
Right.
So that it becomes easier for more people and less technologically savvy people to take advantage. So once I point to a few things. I point to things like high blood pressure and cholesterol. Right. Those are numbers that we all probably pretty much have a sense of what our high blood pressure is and what our cholesterol is. If we don't have a sense of exactly the number, we know whether probably it's high or low. Those kind of metrics didn't really exist for people 30, 40 years ago. I mean, cholesterol 20 years ago was completely unheard of.
Right.
And now it's kind of a common way of most people are able to talk about those things and understand in personal terms what those numbers, what those metrics mean for them. And I think that's, to me, very promising that we've been able. We're not. We assume in this country, we assume that we are illiterate. And it doesn't matter if you are actually illiterate, but we assume we're statistically illiterate.
Right.
Which is not the case. Like, people actually are able to process data and kind of make informed decisions if they're given the information in a clear and engaging way.
Okay.
So I think the tools that I'm talking about make it easier to gather that data,
right,
make it easier for people to understand, and over the long term, I think over long term in technology terms, over the next 5, 10, 15 years, we will look back and be very surprised that these things weren't ubiquitous, that they weren't kind of part of the fabric of our lives as they are now, or as they will be.
Well, be careful with data, because Susanna keeps shaking her head every time you say data.
You had to turn me away.
I had two things to add, and you were talking about the studies that we've done that shows that when we include wireless and mobile access into our definition of an internet user, the so-called digital divide disappears. The difference between African Americans and white adults actually disappears. And for example, African American and Latino young men, if you want to reach them, then you need to make sure that you have a mobile-enabled information resource. And actually, I was thinking about it the other day, and in terms of, people talk about who's ahead and who's behind. Well, who's ahead now? Like, everybody agrees that mobile is the future.
Yeah.
And so if we're seeing that African American adults and Latino adults are more likely to be online mobile, then, well, who's ahead now? So that's really a mind shift, I think, to think about what is access to health information in this new age of mobile health. And since you opened up talking about your family history, something that I thought about in the book is when you were talking about DNA and talking about 23andMe, you brought up genealogy. And that immediately struck a chord with me because I've got some relatives who are obsessed with genealogy and have mapped us back.
Right.
And I would love for them to put cause of death.
Wow.
I'm not that interested in mapping all the way back. I'm interested in cause of death.
Wow.
And there are some tools online where I think you wrote about USDA.
Yeah, well, NIH, I think,
NIH,
has a great family history planner that basically helps people build their family history. And I think, so I talk about family history as we're already talking about DNA, right? We're already talking about genetics, but we talk about it in terms of family history. And so people get very kind of skeeted out by talking about DNA and genetics, but we're already trying to use that information. The disconnect is when all of a sudden we start to think of it in these scary terms rather than things that we can learn about, like genealogy and family history is rather comfortable.
Right, and now you just shared with us what your family history is.
Oh, absolutely.
A little bit about your DNA.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey.
So thanks for sharing.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Yes.